You can go through an entire package of something and really have very little satiety value from it. And if we are working at our home office and eating at the same time, we know that we can consume huge amounts of calories and not even realize that we ate.
In addition to adjusting to social distancing and not being able to go to many of our favorite places, we're also having to adjust to spending more time at home, where the kitchen is just steps away. Couple that with working from home while homeschooling children and dealing with a worldwide pandemic, and you have a perfect storm for stress eating. As a result, many people report filling their shopping carts with all kinds of comfort foods, typically high in sugar, salt, and calories. On today's Sound Living, practicing mindful eating. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. While we can't change the stress, K-State Research and Extension Nutrition Specialist Sandy Procter says we can control what we eat. Sandy, I think that we have all seen some of the things posted to social media that are maybe meant to be somewhat of a joke, but people talking about all of the sweets they're buying, all of the chips that they're buying, all of the comfort foods that they're eating now that they ate when they were a kid, the candy bars, all that sort of thing. And while that might be okay in moderation, what we want to warn people against is making that an everyday occurrence.
Well, Jeff, that's entirely right. And, I think when this first started and we first were sort of coming to grips with what it was going to mean, we all had a couple of really sort of across-the-board responses. For one thing, as humans, we want to be in control. And so when we need to cope or we're having a crisis, a lot of times we crisis eat. And for many of us, that's just not a healthy pattern. We may overeat on sweets or overeat in general. For some people, it's, not eating enough and really forgetting to eat or, avoiding food or drinking too much coffee and having an imbalance with excess caffeine. And so really food does become and is for most of us at some point along a continuum a real emotional issue. And so being aware of that and realizing that that's one of the things that we sort of need to be mindful of and try to resist some of those go crazy urges that we have. Well, when you think of the old King Kong movies where they show the crowd scenes where everybody's just running off into the distance, waving their arms and screaming, we need to resist going there in our heads mentally as much as possible. And that means, when we're making choices, realize that we really do have a choice in the grocery store. Nobody is forcing us to buy the extra large container of Twinkies or whatever it is. We are in control.
I assume that some of this is being done for children who are in the household thinking that their life has been turned upside down and this will be comforting, but again, probably a mistake to overdo it in that area.
Well, I think there actually is quite a bit of research on that when we're trying to help kids cope, certainly support them in their growth and health and well-being, and even in their ability to sleep, we really want to be careful about how many of those empty-type calories that we provide, and instead think of ways, even though it may be challenging, and we may have to do that in some different ways, but think of ways that we can provide healthy foods for them, both meals and snacks, on a regular, dependable basis, so that is one thing that is consistent, and kids realize, a lot of things are up in the air, and people are stressed about a lot of things, but, the meals are still as calming and as routine as we can possibly make them.
I think you bring up a good point about the empty calories, because if we're really trying to satisfy an actual hunger urge, those chips and cookies and other things are not going to stick with you very long, so you're going to be hungry again in no time.
The research on that shows that you can go through an entire package of something and really have very little satiety value from it. And if we are working at our home office and eating at the same time, we know that we can consume huge amounts of calories and not even realize that we ate. So some of these basic things we've always talked about, mindful eating, eat when you're eating, and do other things, work when you're working. Just because it's all now in the same environment doesn't mean that we mix it all together. So be mindful of those routines and schedules and make a point to stop, take a mental and physical break, and then really listen to those cues. Am I hungry, or am I just eating because the clock says it's time when I always eat?
I know in the past we've talked about making bagged snacks or a snack drawer for the kids. This might be something that adults want to start doing too, because I know a lot of them, like you say, are working at home. Some of them are just steps away from the kitchen, and that can be a real temptation. And like you say, if you're not thoughtful about it, you might just grab the first thing you see.
It's a very good time to be thinking about that again, because chances are, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, you did buy some things in bulk, and so you may have a much larger quantity of whatever it is right there in your home, like you said, just a few steps away, and it really could serve us well to do some sort of pre-portioning on that, just like we would portion, say, a giant package of chicken breasts that we bring into the house, and we portion them and store them and get them ready for appropriate use in our menus to come. Same way with snacks. And by doing some of that ahead and portioning them and, putting them in places where the kids know that they can access this during the workday and, you have foods available, but not necessarily all just a free-for-all and everybody just goes through like a herd of locusts and then the food is gone. Trying to keep some of those things a little bit controlled will probably serve us well in a number of ways. For one thing, people will be able to maintain that being hungry at mealtime schedule better, and also some of those things that were maybe, you had to go out, you had to venture out and get out to the store to purchase some things, and so be a little bit more mindful about how we run through some of those extras or those supplies and try to make them last.
What are some things then that we can buy at the grocery store that will maybe satisfy both the sweet tooth and the satiety?
Some of those things that have a little bit more density to them are really going to help. And we always fall back to the idea of fruit. Definitely has sweet. It has its own natural sugar. So some of those types of things can really be a great snack, whether it's fresh fruit or even canned fruit. We talk about canned fruit, but really some of the ways it comes packaged is in individual servings. And so you may find that works really well to have on hand for a snack. And also for seniors that may be doing a little bit more of their own meal preparation now, since some of the social meal settings are limited. And so having some of those individual portion things, they'll stay fresh longer. We're able to have more of a variety in place, and they really are going to satisfy our sweet tooth. Other things that might work really well for us are not necessarily sweet, but very filling and easy to keep on hand in bulk is popcorn. When you think about it, we've gone through our life, for those of us that are older, from making popcorn, out of a 1-pound bag and making it on top of the stove, to microwave cookers, to finding actually can buy microwave popcorn in a bag, to the point where now it's very common to see bags of popped popcorn, totally no preparation out of it. And so you're paying top dollar for really just a few servings of popped popcorn. Well, going back a few steps in that production to some of the stages where you pop it yourself, some of those things might really serve as both educational and entertainment and diversion, but also allow you to have more snacks on hand in a more basic form so that they're going to last longer and probably save money while you're at it.
Yeah, one of the things that popped into my head while you were talking was the celery logs with the peanut butter and the raisins.
Yeah, and some of those things, they're sort of vintage recipes and things that have been around the block, but definitely things that are nutritious. They're kind of fun for kids to put together, and they're made from basic things. That celery isn't just there for that particular snack. You'll use it tonight with dinner, or it can be chopped up and added to a soup that goes into the freezer for later on. There's so many things. If we can take our cooking back just a step or two to having more basic ingredients and fewer of those single-type use snacks or products, it's really going to serve us well in this time when we're trying to stay out of the grocery store as much as we possibly can.
From an economic standpoint, I'm assuming it makes a lot more sense to make your own cookies. It's fun to do, first of all, an activity that you can do as a family, as opposed to buying something that's prepackaged.
It does. It saves money. You can control the ingredients a little bit. If you want to use half whole wheat in your cookie recipe, that will help with your whole grains, and it might be something that allows you to use some products that you have on hand. Plus, it's a living science experiment or practice that really helps people's skill builds, too. We've had so many calls across the extension system for people really interested in it's like, wow, do you have anything that can help me help my child learn how to cook, or how I can better improve my own cooking skills? I'm cooking for the first time really ever, and I have the time to learn. Are there tools out there? And so even though it was kind of thrust upon us, it's a really good time to take some of those lessons and really see how we can improve some of our skill sets.
And Extension does have a lot of materials available online on our COVID-19 site, so they can go there and find all sorts of information.
There's so much there, and it's really fresh and current information, and it looks at this situation from so many different angles. Getting back to what we talked about, the mindfulness and the mental health aspects of it. You know, it's a crisis that takes its form in many ways, and you and I were talking about the sort of the eating presentation of it, how it can really come across and make us feel like we need to eat as though we're in crisis and solving it all with grabbing whatever's quickest available. But there's so many parts to really good personal health during a time of stress or crisis. And there are a lot of tools available for people to look at and for our agents to use with those online groups or notices that they're getting out to people.
And this is really an opportunity with a lot of that information that Extension is providing to really empower yourself to take charge of what's happening in terms of your overall health and your wellness.
And that gets back to one of the things that I think that is really key to the whole discussion that we're having is being able to take charge. We aren't able to be in control of a lot of what is happening right now. And when you think about all the change that has been thrust on families and individuals here just in the last few weeks, it's pretty mind-boggling. And so taking the time to realize that there are still some things that you can choose and capably be in charge of, and that those can help improve your situation, whether that's that schedule and keeping people to a routine, helping kids with their online schoolwork, or reaching out to people that you know might be struggling in a situation a little bit different than yours, or keeping in contact with people who are, because of this situation, even more isolated than you yourself might be. But all of those aspects of taking control, and especially grounding it in what we were talking about originally, taking control of what foods that you want to bring into your household, you know, basically thinking of it as it's one of the things you can do to offset some of the negative effects of the stress that is coming with this situation.
And another thing we can do that you mentioned to me off air was just make sure that you're getting some physical activity, because that will make a huge difference in how you feel, how you sleep, and really how you cope with stress.
And honestly, it's going to affect what kinds of foods you're looking for, too. You're going to be less likely to feel like you need to crave those sweets and those caffeinated foods, some of those things that we know should be on the only eat occasionally list. But if we're getting exercise and we're really out there being physically active, keeping to a schedule, burning some calories and doing some movement and keeping our bodies healthy, we're going to be more likely to want to have some what we consider more positive fuels in the form of foods that we're eating, and it's going to help us keep to that healthier schedule. If you're being active, chances are you're not mindlessly eating at the same time. It's really a good way to sort of break up the day and reinforce some of those positive health habits. So take a deep breath, step back from the news, unplug from your computer, but take some time and try to think how you can put just a little bit more balance into it, because, you know, it looks like this situation is going to be with us for a while, and so it's up to each of us to sort of take some stock and see how we might be able to best manage and maybe reach out and help other people. And that's one way that we can feel a little bit more control of our own situations.
That's K-State Research and Extension Nutrition Specialist Sandy Procter. More information on mindful eating, health, and nutrition can be found online at ksre.ksu.edu. In addition, K-State Research and Extension agents are still working to answer your questions and serve the community. They're all practicing social distancing, and the best way to reach them is by email. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.